What's going on? That's Ben Nicholson-Smith. I'm Arden Zwelling. You know us from @TheLetters, brought to you by the all-new 2019 Ford Ranger. You can get us at sportsnet.ca/podcast. We've got a podcast this week, Ben, talking about what we learned from the first 4 games of Blue Jays baseball, that 2-2 series against the Detroit Tigers. I think one of the biggest things we learned, or one of the biggest things we could glean, is how Charlie Montoyo might manage differently than John Gibbons did over the last several seasons. You know, we saw a sacrifice bunt, we saw some interesting pitcher usage, we saw a pinch hitter in the bottom of the 8th with Rowdy Tellez, which gave the Blue Jays that big 3-run shot, got them back into that game, which they went on to lose, but it still was an interesting decision. What really stood out to you about the way that Charlie Montoyo managed?
The sac bunt stood out to me, and this is a difference compared to John Gibbons, who of course last year set a record in all of Major League history, the fewest sacrifice bunts, the Blue Jays only sacrificing 5 times in the course of the entire year. And Gibbons joked at one point that they had to sign for a sac bunt, but nobody even knew what it was. So then to see Richard Urania drop one down at Montoyo's request in the very first series of the season, it was a difference, and it worked. Urania got the bunt down, advanced Freddie Galvis to third base. Blue Jays didn't end up scoring, but afterwards Montoyo explained his decision-making, and he said that he will do some sacrifice bunting. It's not something that you're going to see if Justin Smoak is up there or once Vlad Jr.'s up here. I doubt he'll be bunting much, but if you have a number 9 hitter, Urania, not a ton of power, you can make the case for setting up the rest of the order with that kind of sac bunt.
Charlie Montoyo said, "I like bunting," and I think it's something we will see because the Blue Jays just have a different lineup construction this season. You know, in past seasons, I would have said, well, the Blue Jays aren't a team that's really going to bunt, right? You've got, you know, Justin Smoak, Jose Bautista, Edwin Encarnacion, Troy Tulowitzki, Russell Martin, Josh Donaldson. Like, I can give you almost a 9-player lineup of guys that the Blue Jays are running out regularly who you really don't want bunting, but they do have a bit more flexibility to play that way this season. The thing that stood out to me, honestly, was that pinch hit. Rowdy Tellez for Luke Maile. Look, it's the bottom of the 8th inning. You're down by 3. You got 2 runners on. Luke Maile, he's a tremendous player, really good backup catcher. Not as much of a threat to leave the yard as Rowdy Tellez is. So you bring in Rowdy Tellez to potentially tie the game, even though you are screwing up your lineup, because now you're going to have to carry a pitcher in your batting order going forward, but you can't tie the game if you get back into it and have a chance to actually win it if you don't make that move. Like, there's a high degree of risk there, but I think the reward was worth it.
It definitely was, and even if Rowdy Tellez had struck out, I still think that would have been the right decision. You look at just going big in that situation, trying to find ways to score runs when you need 3 runs or the game ends. So he's going for it at that point, and of course you're taking your backup catcher out of the game at that point because Maile's gone. So if there ever had been an injury to Danny Jansen, there would be risk there as well. You're into emergency catcher situation, no one wants that, but you have to make that kind of call if you want the upside, and the Jays got the payoff.
Figure it out later. You know, you got to get back into the game, manage what's in front of you. You know, if you get to a point where you've got to, you know, call on Thomas Pannone to throw 4 innings out of the bullpen, maybe you have to do that. If you get to a point where Marcus Stroman has to go play a little second base, maybe you have to do that. Marcus Stroman would love it, but you managed to win the game. So I really liked that move. I bet you John Gibbons would have done something similar, but like, it does show that Charlie Montoyo is willing to make those kind of moves. One more thing I will raise, the batting orders have been different. We've seen 3 different leadoff hitters to this point. We've seen guys kind of moving around in the lineup. That's based on a lot of the data that the Blue Jays are using this year. You know, the Blue Jays are matching up pitchers with spin rates and certain types of curveballs and ways that they like to tunnel and planes they like to throw on with hitters who have certain swing paths and certain swing planes. That's kind of the level the Blue Jays are operating on right now. It's not something we've seen in the past where it was, look, this is going to be my leadoff guy every day, and this is going to be my 3-hole hitter every day. The Blue Jays are showing a willingness under Charlie Montoyo to use a lot of that data to change their batting order construction.
You can cycle different guys in there. Right now, this team is relatively healthy, but once guys get banged up, we know it's a long season, we know guys will need that break, and that will be a really useful way to give them a partial day off.
Good to see the Blue Jays being a bit more flexible, a bit more dynamic. Like, you look at some of these orders, batting orders that we've seen in the past, and we've been like, man, if they could get Kendrys Morales out of there, they could do a lot more interesting things. Kendrys Morales is now out of there. That DH spot is opened up. Charlie Montoyo, he could run out a different batting order and defensive lineup practically every day.
I think we'll see that.
That's Ben. I'm Arden. It's @TheLetters. Sportsnet.ca/podcasts.